Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Em, and today we are going to do a round of if you like this, then you should read that. All right, I don't have a lot of preamble for this video, so let's just go ahead and dive right in. My first pairing is maybe pretty obvious, but I don't see very many people talking about the second author, and definitely not their earlier series. I see a little bit of chatter about their new releases, but hardly anybody talks about their earlier trilogy. So anyways, my first combo is if you like A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers, I think you would really like A Big Ship at the Edge of the Universe. Now, do these both have unnecessarily complicated titles? Yes, they do. And that is not all they have in common though. So The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet is about this crew on this ship, and honestly, it's been so long since I've read this book that I don't even know that I really remember the plot anymore, but Becky Chambers is really well known for writing these cozy sci-fi books with really great found family aspects and really great diverse queer rep. And I think if you liked this, but maybe wanted a little bit higher stakes, granted the stakes in this are pretty high, but if you want it dialed up a lot more and a more interconnected series, because while I think this series is really great, you don't necessarily need to read them in order because the stories don't connect a whole lot. But now in A Big Ship at the Edge of the Universe, we are following our main character. Her name is Boots, and Boots is a bit of a con artist and is kind of down on her luck. And she ends up getting pulled in by her original crew that she has been estranged from. And they kind of accidentally end up trying to stop like this big governmental big bad plot. And so these both have really great found family, really diverse queer rep. But I think if you are a fan of the TV show Firefly, you know, and media like that, I think this is an almost perfect comparison because it is so action-packed. The trilogy has really great character arc. There's a really great full circle moment with the plot and with the big bad in these books. I think the audiobook is absolutely fantastic. And I think Boots is such an easy main character to love and to root for, and it's just got such a great cast of characters, whereas these characters have all kind of faded over time for me, and where now I kind of remember more of like the vibes or the feelings more than I remember what actually happened. In this one, these characters live rent-free in my head all the time, and I think about them maybe not every day or every week, but I come back to this series a lot because I think it's such a good time and the stakes are so high, and Alex White is not precious about their babies. And so I think this is such a fun space opera, like high action space opera. And I think it's an easy crossover for these two. All right, we're gonna go into middle grade land for this next one. This next one is, I think if you like a series of unfortunate events, then you should read Wretched Water Park by Kiersten White. So these have very similar setups. Both of these books have three siblings whose parents have gone missing or have died in a series of unfortunate events. The parents have died. In Sinister Summer, or in Wretched Water Park, book one in the Sinister Summer series, the Sinister Winterbottom siblings their parents have dropped them off at their Aunt Sophronia's house for the summer, but it's very mysterious circumstances. Now, I will say I like this better because it is more hopeful, whereas a series of unfortunate events gets so bleak and can be so depressing. And so I think if you like that, like, not everything is as it should be vibe, but you want a little bit more joy and hope that everything will be fine, you should definitely give this one a try. I also find that there's a lot of humor in this series. I think Kiersten White has a really great sense of humor and a really great sense of how ridiculous the grown-up world must seem to kids. And I think that's a really fun vibe to follow along with. There's a little bit of a supernatural element. Well, Yeah, there's a little bit of a supernatural element in these books. It's hard to tell if it's actually supernatural or if it's just mundane life that appears supernatural. I don't know yet because I'm not done with the series, but I'm having such a good time with this, and I think this could be a really fun series to read on your own, or if you know a middle grader or a slightly younger kid who likes to do read alouds, like I think this would be really fun. All right, this next pairing, we're going to do two books that came out very close to the same time. They're both new releases, relatively new releases, and they have very similar starting points, but the execution is very, very different. So I'm going to say, if you read and enjoyed How to Become the Dark Lord and Die Trying by Django Wexler, then I think you would also really like Dreadful by Caitlin Rezakis. All right, hear me out. So in How to Become the Dark Lord and Die Trying, we're following Davi, who is trapped in this video game loop in this fantasy world. And every time she dies, she restarts at her save point, basically. And she is trying to bring down the Dark Lord in this kingdom. And after 230 something odd lives, she has had it with the dying and the torture and the everything. And she decides she's going to try to become the Dark Lord instead and see if that's more successful. This book is so fun. It does not take itself too seriously, but it is also raunchy and vulgar, and the stakes are so high. And this is a very violent and bloody book, but like I said, it does not take itself seriously, and it is so funny and like a great homage to video games, to Dungeons and Dragons, to all these things in our pop culture. All that being said, I think if you like this, you would also really like Dreadful. Dreadful is a little bit different. So we still have a Dark Lord. We have a Dark Wizard. And what is his name? I've totally forgotten. Oh, he's a Dread Lord. I forgot. So Gav is our Dread Lord. That's right. And Gav wakes up at the beginning of the book with no memory of who he is. Why is he in this castle? Who the people around him are? Nothing. He remembers nothing. He doesn't even remember his name. And he is trying to figure out what the heck is going on and what evil mastermind plot he seems to have gotten himself into. And realizes throughout the course of the book that he doesn't really like who he is. He does not like Dreadlord Gav. He thinks Dreadlord Gav is kind of a jerk. And it's really lovely. It's also very funny. This is definitely a farce where just these ridiculous things happen. The orcs that Gav employs in the castle really steal the show. They're so fun. And it's also got a little bit of a found family aspect that I found utterly delightful. But this is definitely still fairly violent, but not nearly as raunchy as How to Become a Dark Lord and Die Trying. I mean, Davi is so horny for everything that walks, basically. And Gav just has a different vibe. So I think this book is a little softer, not cozy, but maybe a little bit softer, but no less funny and entertaining. And I haven't seen very much chatter about this, which is too bad because I really, really enjoyed this book. And I did read these very close together, and I enjoyed both of them immensely. And so I definitely think this one is worth your time if you haven't checked it out yet. Okay, next we're going to go into romance, but fantasy romance. So I think if you liked Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater, like most of us did, then I think you would really like Letters to Half Moon Street by Sarah Wallace. If you were watching my videos at the end of 2023, you will have heard me talk about this book so many times already because I would not shut up about this book for weeks after reading it. But let me rewind. Okay. Half a Soul is a Regency romance, and it's in Victorian England. And is it Victorian or is it Regency? I think it's called the Regency Fairy Tale series. That would be a clue. And we're following Dora, And when Dora is a child, a fairy tries to steal her soul, but she ends up, well, her cousin ends up thwarting the fairy using Dora's sewing scissors. But in the process of thwarting the fairy, Dora loses half of her soul. And so she grows up, she's has a big disconnect in how to interact with people. She misses a lot of social cues. She doesn't feel a lot of the feelings that it's socially acceptable for her to feel. She's not very good at reading people, and like definitely coded as being on a spectrum. And then she meets Elias, who is like the Lord Sorcier for the king and basically like the royal magician. And there's romance, and then there's plot stuff, but like you're really reading half a soul for the romance between Dora and Elias, and it's very sweet and very cozy type of historical fantasy romance. And just the interactions between Dora and Elias are so utterly wonderful that it's just like, it was such a fun time. Now, Letters to Half Moon Street is set in Victorian England, and there's magic in this world as well. No fairies, but people can do magic. And this is a epistolary romance novel, which is like catnip for me. I love it so much. And we are following, oddly enough, another Gavin in this one. And Gavin has moved to London to kind of run his family's townhouse in there because it's sitting empty while the family is at their country home. And Gavin is very bookish, and he's quiet, and he doesn't like being social, but he ends up making friends with this man named Charles. And Charles is gregarious and kind of known as like a giant flirt in society. And Charles takes a liking to Gav immediately. And Gavin cannot comprehend that someone as handsome and as outgoing and as well liked as Charles is would ever look twice at someone like Gavin. And there's plot stuff in this too, but it's just, it's so good. And so there's letters from Gavin, there's letters from Charles, there's letters from Gavin's sister. Most of the letters are between Gavin and his sister, who I've like totally forgotten her name, which is horrible because she's delightful. Oh, Jerry. Her name's Jerry. Anyways, it's just the swooniest romance novel I think I've ever read. I just could not get enough of it while I was reading it, and I continued to be obsessed for weeks and weeks and weeks after. And I honestly kind of want to reread it now, if I'm being honest. So good. So yeah, 100%. If you liked Half a Soul, I think you will also really like Letters to Half Moon Street. All right, and our final recommendation duo, we're going to go into cozy historical mystery. If you've been watching my vlogs, this will be zero surprise. Zero surprise, because I've not shut up about these books for months now. Anyways, I think if you like A Curious Beginning by Deanna Raybourn, then you absolutely 100% should read A Study in Scarlet Women by Sherry Thomas. You saw this coming, right? Okay. So A Curious Beginning is about Veronica Speedwell, who is a lepidopterist, and her aunt who raised her has just passed away. And in the course of packing up the house and coming back from the funeral, somebody breaks into Veronica's aunt's house and takes something. And Veronica ends up discovering that basically gets put up with this man named Stoker to kind of solve the mystery of what that man was doing in her aunt's house, and also like who Veronica is, because Veronica is an orphan and never knew either of her parents, and her aunts were very secretive and they moved around a lot. So there's a lot of stuff going on. And then this continues into a very long, insanely popular, cozy historical mystery series with a really strong romantic subplot between Veronica and Stoker. I imagine that preamble was not needed, because I can't imagine that you're watching this video and don't know what A Curious Beginning is about. But if for some reason, if by some miracle I have found somebody who doesn't know what this series is about, that's what it is. And this has I think a lot of tension in the romance, and Stoker and Veronica are so easy to root for. And Veronica is very analytical and headstrong and stubborn and brave, and she's very unorthodox. Is that the word I want? She doesn't do what society wants her to do, and she doesn't feel bad about not conforming to society. Anyways, that's great. And Stoker is very much like wants to follow the societal rules, wants to do what's expected of him, and for the fact that Veronica is so dismissive of it really bothers him. Okay, so in A Study in Scarlet Women, this is the Lady Sherlock series, and this is a gender-swapped Sherlock Holmes retelling. And so we have Charlotte Holmes, who is the third daughter in a family of 4 girls, and her mother is a little bit like Mrs. Bennet, though even more unlikable than Mrs. Bennet in Pride and Prejudice, if you can believe it. And Charlotte has known from day one that marriage is not going to be for her, and tries to negotiate with her parents to get a future that is acceptable for both of them. And then her parents, of course, go back on the deal. And so Charlotte figures the only way to live a life that she would be comfortable with is she's going to get herself ruined and then blackmail her father into helping her achieve her goals. Well, it all goes sideways, and she ends up getting ruined, and publicly ruined, and is basically ostracized for society, and starts to disguise herself as Sherlock Holmes and solve mysteries in London and the surrounding area. And she meets Mrs. Watson, who is the widow of an army doctor, and they set up the thing. Set up the ruse. So I think these two have very similar heroines, though not too similar. I mean, they both reject the standard society has set out for them, but they do it in very different ways. Veronica snubs society kind of in its face, where Charlotte is a little bit more circumspect in how she does it. I definitely think Charlotte reads as being on the spectrum in a way that Veronica doesn't read to me. But I think where this series really shines is in its secondary characters, and in the way Sherry Thomas brings the characters together in every book. I feel like in Veronica Speedwell, there's a couple of secondary characters that I really, really love, but there are quite a few that I can just kind of take or leave. And I also don't really like the mysteries in most of the books. When I read this series, I'm really reading it for Veronica and Stoker, and I could care less about what's going on with the mystery. But the mysteries in most of these books are so closely tied to the characters that I am thoroughly invested in what's happening. I also like the romance in here better. There is a really drawn out, in the best way, romance between Charlotte and her friend Ash Ingram, and there's a lot of tension. Their banter is so well done, and these two have very real reasons for why they cannot be together, and I think Sherry Thomas is just an expert at dragging that out in a way that where the pace is just absolutely perfect. And this one is also very long. I think book 9 or 10 just came out for Veronica Speedwell, and book 8 just came out for A Study in Scarlet Women. So you got plenty of books to keep you busy if you want to dive in. Kate Redding also does the audiobooks for for the Lady Sherlock series, and she's a perfect Charlotte in my mind. I almost forgot one. All right, my last one for real is, I think if you like this Christina Lauren book, which I'll be honest, I definitely forgot the name of, and I meant to look it up, and then I forgot, and all I have in my notes is Christina Lauren. So if you liked this book, which is also older, I think you would really like Out of Love by Hazel Hayes. So here's my reasoning. These are both romantic books, and they are both love stories that are not told linearly. Linearly? Yeah. So in this Christina Lauren book, we are following our couple, but we are going back and forth between the present day when they have been been reunited because they've been estranged for a number of years, and flashing back to when they knew each other as teenagers. And so we're moving back and forth between those two events, and I would say, I mean, I guess technically this is a romance novel, but it doesn't feel like a romance novel. Now, Out of Love by Hazel Hayes. This is not a romance novel, but this is the story of a relationship told in reverse. So you are starting the book with these characters breaking up, and you are ending the book with them meeting for the first time. So if you are a fan of the last 5 years, I think this is a great book also. Maybe I should do if you like this musical, read this book. That one might be a really niche interest, but something to think about. And I just recently read Out of Love, and I am obsessed with Hazel Hayes' writing. It was so beautiful, and there were so many things that were discussed in this book, like anxiety, depression, miscarriage, relationships. I think you could read this book and take away many themes, but one of the themes that I really, really loved in this book is the theme of how women should trust each other more. It's done so well in the book, but I just absolutely loved this story. And there is more to it than just the relationship. Like, there's more plot than just the relationship, because she has, she has friends, she has talks about her relationship with her best friend, the relationship she has with her mother, the relationship she has with his mother. Like, it's so many feelings, and it's so well done, and I thought it was absolutely magnificent. So I think if you have read that Christina Lauren, because I think that was popular, 5-6 years ago. I feel like when I was just getting on Instagram, that was having a moment. So I think if that used to be a favorite for you, or if you're a reading backlist and you've read it and you really liked it, that you should also read Out of Love. So there you go. There are all the books that I would recommend for you to read if you have read and enjoyed the other ones. I'll be honest, I tried to pick favorites of mine because those, of course, are always easier to talk about, and books that I feel like are criminally underread on the BookTube platform. So yeah, I would love to know your thoughts, what you think. If you read any of these books, if you think these are good recommendations, if you have your own recommendations for books you think would fit in with these, I would love to hear those as well. And if you want to leave an emoji to just let me know you were here, let's do a lantern emoji or some sort of light. And like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I will talk to you all in the next one. Bye!